carols, sweet silver bells, all seem to say, throw cares away, Christmas is here, bringing good cheer to young and old, me and the bold, ding dong ding dong, that is their song, with joyful ring.
Hi everyone, my name is Shabaz Darr. I work for Concord Technology Group. I'm a senior professional service consultant. My areas of focus in the business are around cloud and security. I would like to thank our sponsors, Concord Technology Group, for sponsoring this video. Today's video is around the Azure event calendar. What is the Azure event calendar? It's a series of blogs and videos published around different topics in Azure. Two good friends of mine, Richard and Gregor, have organised it. It's a community event throughout December, based on a standard advent calendar you get at Christmas, but rather than chocolates, we're going to have different topics in Azure. You can see all the content on YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, and there's a number of people around the world that are part of the Azure community that are going to be publishing content throughout the month. Why security is so important? Security should be the bedrock of any infrastructure, and with cloud, hybrid, on-premises, so many different areas to have your data and your infrastructure, security is even more important. With infrastructures and platforms being spread across hybrid, on-premises and cloud, it's important that businesses find a solution that can fit across all those platforms. My area of focus in this video is going to be around multi-factor authentication. What is multi-factor authentication for a start? Well, it's kind of in the name. It's different versions and different formats of authentication to your system, to your network, to your platform or infrastructure. Attackers and threats are advancing every day, so that means that security has to advance in the same speed, and that's where multi-factor authentication comes in. MFA, including Azure MFA, is based around three principles: something you know, something you have, and something you are. So the first multi-factor authentication principle, something you know. This can be a username, password, PIN, or security questions.
Here we have some more detail around the security questions, which are available only in the Azure AD self-service password reset to non-administrator accounts. So to start with the predefined questions, I'm not going to go through all of them because there's so many, but you can see yourself to start with. What city did you meet your first spouse and partner in? That's the first one. Quite personal questions really, which makes them good in tandem with your password. And this is why MFA uses both of those. So you can see the first set of questions are more around location of specific things, like, you know, in what city was your father born, in what city was your mother born, stuff like that. And then as we go further down, we get into maybe some of the favourite things, like your favourite food, your mother's middle name. There's another one. And as we go further and further down, we get to even more personal items around your siblings, what schools you attended, and so on. So if you ever get anybody coming up to you and asking you these random questions, be suspicious, because they're probably trying to get your personal information. As we go further down, past the predefined questions, we eventually get to custom questions. So these are questions you can set yourself. However, there are certain requirements around those, which we'll see in a second. So these are the custom security questions you can have. And all questions are displayed, same with the predefined questions, are displayed in the same language.
Second principle, something you have. This can be a smartphone, one-time password, passcode, or even a smart card. Third principle, something you are. This is biometrics, like your fingerprint, your eye scan, voice recognition, or using Windows Hello now, you can use face recognition.
Here's a couple of minutes overview of Windows Hello for Business from a Microsoft KB document. It just gives a bit of a short explanation into the sort of problems that Windows Hello addresses. Negates you forgetting your password, especially with the stronger, more difficult passwords. Negates replay attacks and phishing attacks. We're just going to go through quickly the prerequisites for cloud deployment, hybrid and on-premises deployment. You can see Windows 10, Azure AD, Azure multi-factor authentication, some sort of MDM, be it Intune or third party, and obviously an Azure AD premium subscription. With the hybrid deployment, you've got the key trust group policy management, which is Windows 10, and the certificate trust mix managed for hybrid Azure AD joined devices. So these are all the kind of prerequisites you need to go through and need to have for a hybrid deployment, which would be both cloud and on-premises. So there's still some support in and around Windows Server 2010 for domain and forest functional level, as you can see. And then it's just, again, there's some Azure requirements as well, even for your hybrid, because it's in both cloud and on-premises. Finally, we'll just go to on-premises deployment only. So this is very Windows 10, again, Server 2016 schema. The domain, forest and functional levels are similar to hybrid. And again, you've got ADFS this time for the with a third-party MFA adapter.
So far I've discussed a lot of security baseline and MFA in general. Now I want to specifically talk around Azure MFA and what the requirements are around that, and what sets that apart as well from other multi-factor authentication services out there. Azure multi-factor authentication has the same principles as well, but it has some further requirements that you need before you can deploy it. The main requirements are around licensing. The licensing you need is Azure AD, which comes in 3 forms: P1, P2, or the free version.
On the screen now is just some of the differences between the licensing requirements, which I mentioned, the free, the premium, and the premium 2. As you can see, directory objects is the first thing that stands out, with P1 and P2 having no limit, whereas you do have a limit of 500,000 on the directory objects with the free version of Azure AD. And as you just go down the list, you can see device registration, self-service password change. They're all ticked, and all 3 versions allow that feature. As you can see, Azure multi-factor authentication is available in the free version P1 and P2, but it's when you get down to identity and access management is where the free version stops with features, and you are then left with P1 and P2 to get the more advanced features. 3/4 of the way down, you'll notice conditional access starts, and again, P1 and P2 Azure AD both allow you to get this feature, and this is an important feature for the multi-factor authentication, because this is what allows us to create the policies that gives us more control over the multi-factor authentication. And as you get more to the bottom, you'll notice that identity protection is where the P1 Azure AD stops with its features, and this is where you get your value add with the P2 version of Azure AD. However, they're not really relevant for this blog, but I'm sure I can do another one at some point to go through all these.
The main differences between these different levels, P1, P2 and the free version, are the features that come within it. So with the free version you get the baseline multi-factor authentication, which you get with a standard Office 365 Exchange account. With the next level, P1, you get further features, and with P2 you get more of the analytics added onto it. As a side of that, multi-factor authentication is also available within Azure for all global admins, and it has a subset of those features to protect their accounts, because as we all know, the global admin is the God account, as we like to call it. There are several different scenarios for the multi-factor authentication within Azure, including cloud-only scenario, a hybrid scenario, or on-prem legacy apps. With the cloud-only scenario, it uses modern authentication and has no real prerequisites, apart from the licensing obviously. The hybrid scenario requires some more prerequisite configuration, mainly Azure AD Connect. This is the tool that synchronizes your on-premises objects with Azure AD. So you've got a user account in both on-premises and the cloud, which synchronize. Using the Azure AD Connect, you can also configure device hybrid, and also Exchange Hybrid, as well as Azure AD Hybrid.
Here's some more information around the Azure AD Connect tool from a KB article for Azure. The reason I wanted to touch on this in a bit more detail is just because it's such an important aspect of Azure MFA in a hybrid environment. And you can see some of the features, including the federation with ADFS and the health monitoring. And this is quite a good diagram that will show you in a logical sense where all the aspects of the Azure AD Connect sits. You've got the on-premises Active Directory. That's where you install the tool and how it connects into Azure AD and how the users have multiple devices. A bit of an explanation here into what Azure AD Connect Health is, which is kind of the monitoring aspect of Azure AD Connect. So it monitors the health of your identity objects. If your synchronizations are all passing and successful. And some further information around why would you use Azure AD Connect. And as I mentioned, it's such an important aspect of a hybrid MFA deployment because it gives you that identity object in both on-premises and in Azure AD. And it's a single tool and easy deployment experience. And some similar information around why to use Azure AD Connect Health. And then if we go further down, you can see the key benefits and best practices around Azure AD Connect. The enhanced security, which is obviously what we're touching on with MFA, ease of deployment and the use of metrics. And obviously a very good user experience for those who've used it will be able to agree with that. And then just licensing requirements, it's a free tool. So it's part of your Azure subscription, so there's no extra licensing required, which is great.
For the third scenario I mentioned, on-prem legacy apps, a prerequisite is Azure AD application proxy needs to be deployed. When you've met all your prerequisites, the next thing to think about is really your deployment considerations. Decide who you're going to be deploying MFA to. Is it going to be across users, across the board, a group of users, or are you going to assign it to specific roles within the business? What client applications are you going to protect with your multi-factor authentication? The Office ones are quite standard, but if you have HR tools, CRM tools, are you going to deploy multi-factor authentication to protect those as well? Another important deployment consideration is around your devices. Are they going to be cloud only, or are they going to be hybrid Azure AD joined devices? You can integrate your multi-factor authentication in Azure with conditional access policies. The conditional access policies enforce registration, they control where multi-factor authentication is applied, when it's applied and how it's applied. You can create policies for password changes when sign-ins are deemed risky by following events: leaked credentials, sign-ins from unfamiliar devices or locations. Another important consideration around your Azure multi-factor authentication are the authentication methods. There are several different methods you can use. Passwords, for example, which are available for multi-factor authentication and your self-service password reset. Security questions, which I mentioned earlier on in the video, again, used for self-service password resets only. An email address, which has to be a non-Azure address, so it could be Gmail or Hotmail, which you can use for self-service password resets only. Using the Microsoft Authentication app. Again, this can be used for the multi-factor authentication or the self-service password reset. You can use third-party hardware tokens, which can be used for the multi-factor authentication and your self-service password reset. Two authentication methods you can use your mobile for are SMS and voice calls. For both of these methods, you can use a multi-factor authentication or for the self-service password reset. As I mentioned earlier, multi-factor authentication is available from a number of vendors. So why should we use Azure multi-factor authentication? Azure MFA has integration with multiple applications. It has integration with Windows on-premises Active Directory. Azure MFA has integration with cloud services, including both Salesforce and Office 365. I hope you've all enjoyed this Azure Advent Calendar video on Azure multi-factor authentication. If you have any more questions, please feel free to tweet me on my Twitter handle and LinkedIn, or you can email me. Thanks for watching.
Hark how the bells, sweet silver bells, all seem to say,